Welcome to Ray's Latino Talk podcast and the What's Next radio show on WPPM LP 106.5 in Philadelphia. This is the home for stacking truth about politics and the latest headlines from a diverse perspective. This is your host, Ray Collazo. In just moments, you will hear my interview with Vanessa Cardenas, the National Coalition's Director for the Joe Biden for President campaign. I got some A-listers coming to Ray's Talk Show. My analysis and a few endorsements for the upcoming elections in Philadelphia in the latest Trump immigration news. But first, a few words on what this week's abortion rights news means for our country. If you saw this week, Alabama Governor Kay Ivey signed into law a bill banning almost all forms of abortion in her state, with no exceptions even for cases of rape or incest. While this law doesn't get scheduled to take into effect until the beginning of 2020, it is causing a lot of concerns because if this law were to ultimately take effect, a doctor who performs an abortion in Alabama could face up to 99 years in prison. It would be the most restrictive and extreme abortion ban in the country. That followed earlier this week, Georgia Governor Brian Kemp signing into law a heartbeat bill banning abortion as early as 6 weeks into pregnancy. So virtually banning abortion in the state for all intents and purposes. I mean, if you just think about the time between someone, maybe either a woman missing her period and maybe and trying to determine whether or not she's pregnant. I mean, it really is sort of an unrealistic time frame. This could lead to Georgia women who have abortions to go to jail, even if they choose to have the abortion legally outside of the state, if they're a Georgia resident. As they say down the way, there are levels to this. From a policy perspective, these state laws are blatantly unconstitutional. I mean, I don't know what else to say about it. Roe versus Wade is the law of the land and is really teeing up a potential battle in the Supreme Court that indeed could overturn Roe versus Wade with this sort of very Trumpian Supreme Court that we have now. Many legal experts are saying it's quite possible the lower courts will overturn or sort of block these state laws, these draconian, really illegal state laws, and then the Supreme Court would just sort of leave it at that. But there's no question Roe versus Wade's in the balance, has a lot of political implications, but most importantly, has implications about the culture we're going to have as a country. Are we going to be a country that's going to go backwards in how we sort of wanting to harken back to a Handmaid's Tale reality where women are very much treated as second-class citizens, and that's codified into law? Are we going to move forward as a country and really respect the rights of women? Remember our friends in Georgia and Alabama, these laws have not gone into effect yet, and so make sure that people understand their rights as we move forward and what we can do to influence the process moving forward. From a societal perspective, broadly speaking, let there be no doubt there's some truths here that need to be very clear to everyone listening to this. The first one is very much basic, but needs to be stated, particularly from men in these conversations. There's no doubt this is about controlling women. And let's be real. If men could get pregnant, this would never be an issue in our national political discourse. Men want whatever they can want to do. They want to have all the guns they want. They want to smoke whatever they want. They want to drink whatever they want. They want to eat whatever they want. They want to consume whatever porn they want to. Do you think it would ever come to it that these same men, particularly those in power, when it came to controlling their bodies and on some level their sex lives, they would go for that? Give me a break. And the other truth, which has not gotten a lot of attention nationally, but will be, like I said, you listen to Ray's Talk Show to find out what they're going to be talking about 6 months from now. These new state laws are particularly, the agenda here is about controlling Black and Latina women in those states. In the case of Georgia, this law would inevitably lead to putting Black and Latino women in prison. Do you really think? I mean, let's be honest here. Upper class white young women or upper class women who have access to private doctors, have access to all kind of resources, are going to go to jail for getting abortions in Georgia if this law were to stay in the books? Come on now. And it's not a coincidence that this passed in a state where a Black woman, Stacey Abrams, if she had had a fair fight from an electoral perspective, would have beaten Brian Kemp for governor in the elections last November. So what can we do with this woman who, is on the track to potentially run against Governor Kemp in 2022 again? As the electorate gets more diverse, as we have more time to mobilize the emerging electorate of this community, as more young people see the fallacy of this Republican, right-wing, ridiculous agenda that's about continue to support the 1% at the cost of everyone else. Oh, let's discourage Black and Latinos from moving into the state. Let's encourage Black and Latinos who are concerned about these issues from moving out of the state. Let's imprison young Black and Latina women. Oh, yeah, that's family values. Separate more young people from their mothers. The new political Southern Republican strategy. And from a personal perspective, and I don't think we need to continue to have these conversations, and this is a very much a solo show this week, but I need to have this conversation with Yashira Rivera and other Latinas who are abortion rights activists and women's rights activists. And we need to have continue this for real conversation. I don't think we do it enough, but I just want to share with you from a very personal perspective. I want y'all to be real clear about this. And again, maybe we need to do a better job having this conversation, even with our friends on the pro-life side, many of which are there from a political perspective that got us from real good intentions. Okay? So this isn't about beating up the other side. Many of the genuine activists, not the elite political class, which are full of it. Nobody wants there to be a need for any abortions. Nobody likes the idea of an abortion. So the question is, what do we need to do to minimize the need for abortions in our society as much as humanly possible? And familia, and maybe you consider this the sad truth, but this is the truth. That's not going to happen by singularly by reversing Roe versus Wade. To minimize the need for abortions, familia, you need to provide women health care, particularly young women, particularly poor women. You need to provide them access to birth control, quality sex education, quality education across the board, to protect women from sexual assault and molestation and rape, to hold sexual predators accountable. One of the memes I saw going around with this whole conversation this week about these new laws is that in Georgia, women would be held more accountable for having an abortion than potentially their rapist. The bottom line is, if you want to prevent as much as possible in our society abortions, we need to support our young women and support them in their life options. Don't forget, choice works both ways. And I'll share with you on a personal level. Myself, my wife, the overwhelming majority of people in my family and my social circle growing up in, in some ways a very progressive family, but in certain issues, particularly personal issues, sort of conservative in sort of our style, in our approach in certain ways, believe it or not. Pero fíjate, we live pro-life lives personally, me and my wife. In most circumstances, besides the obvious extreme cases, we believe that, if my wife were to get pregnant under whatever circumstance, we would have the baby. No importa. Again, outside of those really, emergency cases, which obviously everyone would understand. But we're fortunate to live in a country where we have that choice. There's nations, and there's been times in our history where we limit, in many countries around the world, where people limit how many children you have. Whether if you're from a certain class or you live in a certain part of the world. I remember years ago, China for a long time had, on some level, not only societal pressure, but literally laws. You could have only a couple kids, and they would prosecute people and hurt children over that. It's ridiculous, right? Social engineering shit gone out of control. But guess what? We live in a country where we have the choice. You can have 5, 6, 7 kids if you want. You know what I mean? That's not a small thing to have that liberty. And by the way, men have a choice to have kids with multiple partners. Last time I checked, nobody gets thrown in jail for that. Women having a choice, especially what they can do with their own bodies, is what we need to support. Let's hear some big news from Vanessa Cardenas, and I'll come back to talk Philly politics on Ray's Talk Show. We are so excited to have on the line someone you're going to hear a lot about on Ray's Talk Show this year and for the next 2 years. And in the world of Latino politics, the National Coalition's Director for the Joe Biden for President campaign, Vanessa Cardenas. Welcome to Ray's Talk Show.
Hi, Ray. Thank you so much for having me. It's a real pleasure to be on.
Vanessa, we're so excited about this, and we could talk to you all day. We know you're extremely busy, but we did want to squeeze in. I know for particularly our local listeners in the Philadelphia area, you have some big news to share with us this weekend. But first, Vanessa, can you first share with our listeners, not only in the Philadelphia area, but around the country and throughout the world, how it feels to be a Latina on such a high-profile presidential campaign?
Well, that's a really great question. You're actually the first interview that I give since I've gotten this job. This is my second week. And to be honest, it's surreal. One of the things that I always say is that the American dream is very real for me. I came to this country when I was 14 years old with my mom. She's a single mom. And I have had such incredible experiences. And this to me is really just an incredible again, an incredible experience to really affect our country and be part of our democracy and sort of our civic life in a way that I've never thought I would, sort of be engaged in. So it's incredible. And I also feel like this moment is so important for our community because what's happening in our country is affecting us so deeply. And we all have a role to play in taking back our country and just really going back to what America stands for. So I'm really, really humbled to be part of this campaign, but also really just excited and just really looking forward to, how we say in Spanish, poner mi granito de arena, contribute to make a change, even if it's in a small way.
Absolutely. And you're listening to Vanessa Cardenas, very well-known national political operative and now working on the Joe Biden for President campaign. This is so exciting. And I'm so excited that you're joining a very talented team. I was sharing with you before we started recording. I have such respect for some of your new colleagues like Erin Wilson, who we had collaborated a lot when she was with Senator Casey's office as his state director. And of course, one of my compas, Cristobal Alex, is one of your coworkers. And, Cristobal, we're Team Cristobal here in Ray's Talk Show.
And, that's the other thing that I'm most excited about, that, the quality of people that this team has is really just great. And also, I should say that the campaign has also made a big effort to reach a diverse set of people. So that's also exciting.
Very interesting. Before we ask you what led you specifically to this opportunity, I wanted to very quickly ask you, so Vanessa, as a you're obviously passionate sort of about the values of this country, but what led you quickly to get involved in political work and activism and campaigns and some of the advocacy you've done over the years?
Sure. Well, it's actually really interesting because I'm actually one of the few people in the campaign that actually has never worked in a campaign before. I've come to this work really from an advocate side. I started my career in the immigrant rights community. That was actually my first job in DC. And then I worked in policy at the Center for American Progress for about 8 years, both on its communication side and its policy side. And at CAP, beyond immigration, I also worked on issues like climate change and a little bit of education and economics. So, being at that think tank, it really sort of exposed me to a range of experts and a lot of issues. Healthcare was one of also the issues that we worked a lot when I was there. And then I had just the real amazing privilege of going to work at the World Wildlife Fund in its climate change program. And they had this really interesting program about mobilizing Latinos to advance a global climate change agenda. And I say this because while all my work was in policy, I've came to the conclusion that we know what the policy solutions are to fix many of the problems that our country faces. What we really need are champions that are going to fight to make those policies a reality. And that's why I decided to sort of jump to the electoral side. So after the World Wildlife Fund, I went to work at Emily's List, which is a political action committee that trains pro-choice Democratic women. And again, being there after the 2016 election was like the best place to be, because after 2016, all these women sort of started coming to us and saying they want to run for office. So I was able to sort of be in sort of that, in the middle of that energy. And then last, 2018, last November, we had so many victories in terms of women running for office and winning at every level. And that was sort of just the first time that I really was part of the electoral side. So that's sort of my, the path that took me here. But again, it's because I believe that we need real champions that are going to fight for our community and are really committed to the goals that we need to achieve in order to improve our way of life.
And so, Vanessa, after this, with your career in activism and policy and advocacy, what ultimately led you to join recently the Joe Biden for President campaign?
Yeah, well, specifically, I would say that I really believe what he's fighting for. I think that he really articulates what I believe in, which is that right now we're really fighting for the soul of our country. We're fighting for our values as Americans. I think that we need to be reminded of that our ideals, our values are really what keeps us together. That's the genius of this country, the idea of this country, that people can come from anywhere and we can just build ourselves up and do extraordinary things. Second of all, he also speaks about rebuilding the middle class. And I believe in that so much, coming from Bolivia. And I'm sure that this is something that some of your listeners also have experienced. We know what it's like to live in countries where you have a tiny set of really rich people and a huge segment of the population being poor and not having a strong middle class. And when I came to this country, that's what I saw. What I mean is, when I came to this country, what I saw was that there was a strong and vibrant middle class, and that there was mobility. I'm not saying it's perfect, because obviously as a country we have still a long way to go, but I think that we were able to really create a strong, vibrant middle class that really helped us economically. So I think his message of sort of focusing on the middle class as an engine of our economy is really right on the mark. And the last piece is, his message of unity, that I think that we have to come together as Americans, that it doesn't matter whether I'm Latina or somebody else is African American or Asian. We all aspire for the same things. We all want safe schools. We want good jobs. We want to feel that we are advancing in our careers, in our lives. We want to have access to healthcare. So, we need to be united in sort of the things that we aspire. And I feel that he also sort of embodies that, and really embodies those messages and really speaks very eloquently. And I think his record really points to sort of that work. When you talk about climate change, or you talk about, he was one of the early champions around climate change. When you look at, for example, the Violence Against Women Act, he was, the lead sponsor of that legislation. So, and of course, going back to the Affordable Care Act, he again worked with President Obama to make that a reality. So I feel that he really has a lot of, he not only has again, maybe articulated what he wanted to have happen, but he's actually worked to make those things happen. So he knows how, he has the experience to actually make the wheels of government churn. And then one last thing, if I would just may add, I also think that it's great that we have so many Democratic contenders this time around. I think it just speaks to the energy that we have right now on the Democratic side.
Yeah, no, and we're going to continue to talk about many of the issues you just spoke about, Vanessa, and they're resonating so much on our radio program and podcast. Whether it's healthcare, and as we know, it's healthcare is really 7 issues in one, right? I mean, from drug, just healthcare access to prescription drug prices, and so many other elements of it which impact our community disproportionately. The Latino community benefited from the ACA as much or more than anyone in this country. In environmental issues in VAWA, we just had a Latina domestic violence advocate who supports survivors of domestic violence. I want to connect you with in Philadelphia. So she's one of our, we're one of her main supporters here on our show. So a very important topic. Vice President Biden has made quite a commitment to Philadelphia for this campaign. Can you tell us, Vanessa, about the big announcement and the event coming up in Philadelphia, my beloved hometown, this weekend?
Sure, yeah. So the Biden campaign's headquarters is going to be in Philly.
Wow,
so
big news, Vanessa.
It is. So I will become sort of I'll be in Philly. So we are all moving there. Hopefully by the end of July, the whole team will be there. People are already moving, but some of us that are in DC, we're gonna take a couple of more weeks. But it is exciting. It's sort of I think it's very meaningful for us. It's the birthplace of our nation, and we're just going to be on the ground working really hard to get Vice President Biden elected to become our president. And along those lines, this Saturday on May 18th, he will have his official kickoff rally in Philadelphia. It will be at Eacon's Oval at 1 p.m. this Saturday, and it's going to be a great event. We have a really nice and tight program. It's not going to be very long, so people should come out and just spend a few hours with us. Really, I think just launching this campaign, which is going to be squarely focused on what makes America such a special, and really a valuable place. So we just hope that people are going to come out and be supportive of Vice President Biden as he launches a campaign that's, again, going to be focused on what America really stands for.
And so that's at a Philadelphia Familia. That's 1 o'clock in Philadelphia, Eacon's Oval by the Art Museum. Wonderful location for a rally. It's going to be a beautiful day on Saturday. And look, I would say this, even if you're not firmly committed yet to the Vice President Joe Biden's campaign, I would encourage my local activists to come, hear what he has to say, and let's listen to what this campaign stands for, but also show the national audience, because the eyes of the national media will be on Philadelphia, and we want to see brown faces and a diverse face there to show that the Latino community in this part of the country is going to be very engaged in these elections. Lastly, before we let you go, Vanessa, we know you're going to be very busy, and we're so excited you're going to be a neighbor of ours for some time, and we're going to make sure you're connected to some of the best cuisine and arts and leadership that we have in our country. I'm so proud of our local community. But remind people, again, about the rally, but also how they can connect with the campaign, regardless if they live locally, if they live anywhere part of the country. They're not in an early primary state, but they want to somehow engage with you and the Joe Biden campaign. How can they do so?
Sure. Well, the best way to do it is through our website, joebiden.com. That's where we have all the information about the rally this weekend, and just sort of where you will be able to see all the events that we have throughout the country. In addition to the rally, we're also having house parties throughout the nation. So if there's somebody out there who does not live in Philly, you can also watch the actual rally online, and you can, even if you are willing to, you can host a party. So all of that information is on our website. So that's the best way to connect, joebiden.com.
That is fantastic. You've been listening to the National Coalition's Director for the Joe Biden campaign, a Latina o Boliviana, Vanessa Cardenas. So proud of you, Vanessa. So excited. I think
saludos a los bolivianos.
Yes, absolutely. And as you were ticking off your career, I'm thinking we've worked together in sort of 3 or 4 iterations of your career. So we're very proud of you here, and again, excited to be able to share your voice as part of these ongoing conversations that we're having here at Raise Latino Talk podcast in our radio show here at WPPM LP Philadelphia 106.5 FM. Mil gracias, Vanessa. I know we set this up in la última hora, but that's the campaign life, and we look forward to continue these conversations about the issues that impact our community and your campaign in the coming months.
Gracias. Thank you so much. And, I hope to see a lot of you out there, people from Philly on Saturday, but please do connect with our campaign and hear the Vice President's message. And again, I think for us Latinos, this is an important moment. We have a lot of work to do, and I'm excited that our community is very engaged and paying attention. So I hope that this is actually going to be an incredible cycle for us Latinos.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Vanessa, and we'll see you on the road.
Thank you.
Welcome back to Ray's Latino Talk podcast and the What's Next radio show at WPPM LP, Philadelphia, 106.5 FM in the city of brotherly love. Speaking about my beloved city, Tuesday, May 21st, are local elections here in Philadelphia and actually throughout the state. So if you're in Allentown, Reading, Lancaster, anywhere in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, you've got most likely some local elections coming up that have some big impact on whether it's your mayor, city council, local judges, have major impact, and really where true change begins on the local level. We traditionally, unfortunately, have pretty low turnout for these type of elections across the board, particularly for these primaries, where really, in our part of the country, most local elections are determined. So it's critical we get involved and vote on May 21st, this upcoming Tuesday. The mayor's race in Philadelphia is pitting Mayor Jim Kenney versus challengers Anthony Hardy Williams and Alan Bukovitz. I'm not endorsing anyone in this race. I don't have a particularly strong feeling about any of them, but it is a fascinating race. It's ironic because the argument for Kenney when he ran successfully 4 years ago was that he was elected because he was seen, and I agreed at the time, as sort of a consensus candidate, sort of agreeable from many parts of Philadelphia and sort of the political leadership from kind of our traditional sort of white-led building trade to sort of like grassroots black leadership, and sort of most entities in between sort of saw him as a consensus candidate, progressive on certain social issues. But as mayor, he's been sort of oddly polarizing. It's been an interesting sort of term for Kenney. The soda tax piece, which for folks that aren't familiar, basically put a tax on sugary drinks that was supposed to go to money for developing a mandatory pre-K program in our public school system. That sort of happened. I mean, the money was generated, and some of that money went to that, but a lot of that money sort of went to the general fund, and it, besides sort of the regressive policy element of it, sort of taxing the poor disproportionately and impacting our small businesses, our bodegueros in the pocket, it also felt politically motivated. It felt, if sort of the internal politics, sort of his political friends, and it sort of manifested from labor, internal labor fights in the larger labor movement of Philadelphia. From a Latino perspective, he's been great on defending the rights of immigrants and inclusive messaging around that. So sort of Philadelphia sort of being a target for the Trump administration. He's been the one that put us in the air for that, which is a good thing. And also generally was helpful, and certainly from a messaging perspective around dealing with the migrant population that came from the island post Hurricane Maria. But the biggest issue hitting Philadelphia's sort of core Latino neighborhoods is the opioid crisis. And, essentially we have a community called Kensington, which has been sort of the ground zero for the opioid crisis in really the region. And so there's a lot to that story, but the bottom line is that the mayor's proposed sort of injection sites to sort of provide a safe alternative for folks that are addicted to seek services and seek some sort of support. And so that's been a very controversial issue because, essentially you can argue the validity of that policy, but the bottom line is that that policy by nature keeps the addicted in this relatively small community. And what is manifested is that many of those, and many of us would argue most of those people, aren't from that community, and frankly are white. And so they come from either other parts of Philadelphia that are whiter, or in some of the more suburban affluent areas that are mainly white. And so we essentially have a case where you have literally addicted white males and addicted white people who aren't from these neighborhoods originally, who are literally camped out in these neighborhoods while they deal with their addictions. I mean, I'm literally meaning camped out. While people who are not addicted, not dealing with any of that kind of stuff, who go to work every day, have have to subject their children and their families to sort of people blatantly doing drugs, right, and injecting themselves and right in front of their community when they're not there. Now, of course, we have we want to support our people who are addicted regardless of what they look like. The issue is, and my question to people listening to this, they're maybe agreeable to that policy, is, could I take 20 Puerto Ricans and go to Roxborough or Rawhurst or any other predominantly white community in the city and just sort of camp out, even if I wasn't doing anything else? Imagine if I was selling drugs and doing drugs. I don't think that would last too long policy-wise. I don't think I would be allowed to linger. So it's very much seems sort of engineered that our community is getting the disproportionate brunt of this issue. And so, needless to say, we're not too happy about his approach at this point. That being said, well, they're both competent and have been elected officials over the years. Currently, Anthony Hardy Williams is a state senator. Anthony Hardy Williams, state senator, and Ala Buckowitz. Have they done enough to deserve our vote? I mean, that's an honest question. They're voting against soda tax. They're both against the injection sites. But what are they really for? And what are they really proposing? The debates and the messaging that have happened locally have really focused more on tearing Kenny down than really about them and their ideas and their vision for the city. So we'll see. Vamos a ver. Definitely encourage people to keep looking into that. Let's go to City Council, the 7th Councilmatic race, which is the big dolor de cabeza in the Latino community in Philadelphia. It basically is the election to see who's going to, from a political perspective, be the de facto leader of the Latino-based corridor community in Philadelphia. It includes councilwoman, the current councilwoman, the first Latino, in this case Latina, to hold that role. Maria Quiñones Sanchez is running for re-election. It appears it'll be her last term before she gears up for a mayoral run in 2023, but we'll see. Her challenger is longtime state representative Angel Cruz. The face of Latino's political presence in the sort of formal Democratic political party machine. As in the past, the City Democratic Party, which almost always endorses incumbents, made the exception again for Maria by endorsing Cruz. Maria Quiñones Sanchez, for those that don't know her, she was sort of an AOC figure before it was popular. Very independent, progressive, fierce Puerto Rican woman who, again, was super progressive before it was sort of fashionable and has always been attacked and punished by the local political machine because of that. And so she's the only Democrat in Philadelphia, for example, in Philadelphia City Council to win against soda tax initially. And no surprise, that soda tax was pushed by the mayor's sort of political godfather, union leader Johnny Doherty. And guess what? Now they're all against her, and that's sort of a pattern that we've seen in local politics. Maria sort of goes with what she believes. And if that's not in line with the Democratic values, power players, then they hold that against her and call her a B and say she's being difficult. And they sort of, call her a tough woman to deal with, basically. That's sort of their argument. That's basically State Representative Cruz's argument. Quiñones has a deep record of policy supporting her district and those traditionally disenfranchised in Philadelphia. Check out our website, maria2019.com. You'll see it for yourself. See the legislation around housing, healthcare, workers' rights, and a host of issues. And let me tell you, I work with elected officials around the country, particularly local elected officials, city council people like that. Maria is one of the most thoughtful policy minds in city politics anywhere in the country. And I don't just say that flippantly, and I say it because I'm a friend. I say it because I support her. Maria is really thoughtful and really has a vision and has the ganas to fight for what she believes. As a state representative, Angel Cruz, to be fair to the guy, he's never pretended to be a policy wonk. He never has been, that's not what his focus has been. His best moments have been sort of in these crisis moments in the community. Some of you may remember many years ago, 2004, I think. You may remember the Delamar Vera story. It actually was an it was a basic cable movie, but basically it was a missing child that Cruz helped save from a woman that kidnapped her. It was an incredible story, DNA. The mom ran into the daughter and thought it looked like her. You have to check out the movie. It's on Netflix somewhere, I guess. But he also worked very closely, and he also worked very closely with Quiñones Sanchez on supporting Puerto Rico and the Puerto Rican migrants post Maria. So recently, these two did find some common ground working on that issue, and they both acknowledged that was a moment of unity for them. Cruz's argument is largely personality driven. It's basically that same sort of party line. She's hard to deal with. She's a B. There's sort of these implications of, tough chick stuff. And he claims she's hard to work with. And, he agrees with her on the core issues. He's with her now on the soda tax piece, but he doesn't have a plan. Maria, as Elizabeth Warren would say, has a plan for that of how to address the soda tax revenue that would be lost if it was repealed. On the issue of the opioid crisis in Kensington, I have to be, again, to be fair, both of them have some reasonable ideas and methods to address the issue. The question at the end of the day is who has the vision and courage to tackle the bigger problem, which is the social engineering that it involves dealing with police, involves in dealing with sort of just our policy around this issue, taking on the establishment that is basically encouraging on some level these people that are not from this community, who are mostly white, to, again, loiter and literally camp out, literally with tents, and literally camp out in this community at the doorsteps of Latinos and Black neighbors as they deal with their addiction. That's a bigger challenge, and it's clear to me only one candidate's up for that. I've supported the councilwoman, Maria Quiñones Sanchez, for a long time, and I strongly endorse her candidacy now. Please vote for Quiñones Sanchez on Tuesday, May 21st. I not only hope she wins, but I hope we can get past this. Notice I'm not hating on anybody here. Other people, regardless of who I support or don't support, bring things to the table, and they need to continue to serve. And we continue to find post-Hurricane Maria moments to keep working together. On to city council at large races. For people not familiar, there's over 30 candidates for 5 spots in this Democratic primary. It's quite a battle royale. A few of the incumbents are pretty strong, and there's several interesting candidates for sure. But I want to focus my comments on the 3 candidates that I've worked with in the past and that I can co-sign on their efficacy, that I feel comfortable supporting for this upcoming election. Fernando Trevino would become the first immigrant member of city council in recent history and the first city council person and local elected official outside of judges of Mexican descent. Fernando Trevino is an ideas guy. He's worked in government, politics, and law, both in the United States and internationally. And that's really given him an excellent foundation for developing solutions for fiscal and community development challenges. Trevino's a super ethical guy, a real good guy too, and he's super committed not only to his family and our community, but the city of Philadelphia. So definitely look out for Trevino in the ballot on Tuesday. I first worked with Isaiah Thomas when we were part of a Little League program that his dad was running, and I was just a kid that was one of the players. And I remember the first time I met him, I think he was 3 years old, and I was 6 or something. And we were little kids cleaning up a baseball field before a game. I remember it really well. He had this cute little face, his hat to the side. Cute kid. And his name was Isaiah Thomas. And Thomas is an educator, a mentor in this community, and he has a particular passion for youth development, particularly how do we support and guide not only young people, particularly our young Black males. And that passion and that background, that would serve him really well in city council. And Isaiah, I got to give him a lot of credit. He's shown a lot of perseverance. This is the 3rd time he's running for this position, and he's always run optimistic campaigns, positive campaigns, but also very professional. And I've always been impressed when he was a real young guy when he started doing this, how organized his campaigns were. Isaiah is a winner in life whose voice would make a great addition to city council. So also pull the lever for Isaiah Thomas. Eric Almiron is a local immigrant rights activist that would become the first Paraguayan-American elected official of a major city. Almiron, let me tell you, she's pure Philly street fighter, Rocky B-Hop. AI. You want to talk about a Philly street fighter, South Philly street fighter? She's an activist. Eric Almiron is an ultra woke activist as well. The transition from being the ultimate outsider sort of locally to be an inside policymaker would be really interesting to watch. But we want to see it happen. Best of luck, and please support Fernando Trevino, Isaiah Thomas, and Eric Almiron. Also, special shout out to our man Eddie Moran, running for the mayor of the city of Reading, PA. Go, Eddie! Support Eddie Moran up in Reading. If you're in Pennsylvania, please, por favor, familia, vote Tuesday, May 21st. These local elections matter so much, and where the true change begins. When we come back, an immigration update from Trump's mouth to the devil's workshop. You are listening to WPPM LP 106.5, hashtag People Powered Media, and Ray's Latino Talk podcast. You can download podcast anywhere you can download a podcast, from iTunes to Google Play to Spotify and everywhere in between. Keep the conversations going on Twitter at Ray's Podcast, that's RAYS Podcast, and IG at Ray's Latino Talk. the last thing I wanted to touch on this edition of Ray's Talk Show is President Trump announced this week his new immigration plan, which includes more border wall funding. Of course, we would be paying for it. Change the legal immigration system to more highly skilled, less family unification. That means it becomes our immigration policy becomes for essentially the wealthy and for much less people of color. And so I just want to read an analysis of my compadre, an immigration policy expert, Carlos Guevara of Unidos US, his analysis of this announcement this week. Quote, the immigration policy introduced by the White House today completely avoids addressing the most critical issues facing our immigration system and does nothing to fix the devastation of family separation in communities across our country. Also, it doesn't do anything for DACA, the Dreamers, or TPS recipients. Trump's plan proposes changing the face of legal immigrants to favor the best, which really means the rich, at the expense of reuniting immigrant families. So a word of the politics of this proposal this week won't go anywhere. You know, for all they talk a good game, at the end of the day, Republicans don't support eliminating immigrant labor, which essentially this proposal would do because of their business interests. So if they really wanted to eliminate farm workers and the people that work at your hotels and restaurants and work in construction jobs and landscaping and caregiving around this country, the undocumented population, they could have easily, right? They've never done that. Why? Because at the end of the day, the dirty little secret of our immigration system is that it benefits their wealthy donors. So we're used as pawns, we're used as piñatas for their political movement. But at the end of the day, de corazón really don't want to change it because it works for them financially. And of course, it's DOA in the Democratic-controlled House. So this proposal is not going anywhere from a legislative perspective. By the way, on this, isn't it ironic that the hardcore base of the Republican Party, these angry Republicans, these people are coming into our country, they're taking our jobs, they don't belong here, they don't deserve to be here, would then turn around and support a change in the legal immigration system that would allow more upper class immigrants to come in our country. So instead of us coming in here sort of working our way from the bottom up, we're going to allow immigrants to come in and be the CEOs and be the executives at our hospitals and be the people that run our universities. So that you would prefer your Republican populace, you angry people whose wages have stagnated, who feels very disenfranchised by the change in the global economy, the change of the demographic and makeup of the country. You would prefer more upper class immigrants to benefit from our system. That's what you want. While your wages stagnate, and you cheerlead for this man, while your wages stagnate, while your children have less access to the American dream, your children have less access to higher education, much by saying it's on some level people that look like me's fault. This week we have seen what Trump's 2020 campaign is going to be about. Between abortion and immigration, this is laying out the game plan. It won't be about a populist message, despite some top-line evidence, indicators that the economy is looking strong. We can argue that, but there are some basic facts to support that. It will be about scaring moderate white voters by arguing only Trump can protect them from extreme immoral socialists who support abortion and violent Latino immigrants. That's basically what you have seen this week is basically a summation of what his campaign is going to be about in 2020. It's all he had from the beginning of this political nightmare, and it's all he's going to have left: hate and division. The question for us, the only question for us, is what we are going to do about it. Thanks for listening to Ray's Latino Talk podcast in WPPM LP Philadelphia 106.5 FM. Por favor, please come out and vote on May 21st in Philadelphia and throughout the state of Pennsylvania. And there's other local elections coming up in your communities. Please go out and vote. Every election is so important. All politics is local, familia. And take one step today. Could be a Facebook post. It could be looking up how you can register your young cousin to vote. It could be reminding your 5 friends to come out for the election on Tuesday. It could be attending a political rally. It could be donating to a political candidate. But take one step today to be the change you want to see. This is your host, Ray Collazo from Ray's Latino Talk podcast and the What's Next radio show on WPPM LP Philadelphia. And have a wonderful weekend.